What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first ever episode of Bucco Territory on the Foul Territory Network. My name is Noah Hiles from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Most of you watching this are probably familiar with my work covering the team over parts of 5 seasons, especially the last 2 as the lead Pirates beat writer at the Post-Gazette. Some of you might be familiar that I started a new professional journey. I'm now the sports enterprise writer at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, but there's still plenty of Pirates talk to be had. This is a new project that I'm getting started, and it's not just me involved. And it's something that I think all 3 parties involved are very excited about. I want to introduce my 2 co-hosts on this program now. First guy, I think you all recognize that face. Josh Harrison, former Pirates All-Star infielder. Jay Hay is on the program, and alongside him is Mark, a.k.a. Platinum Key. I don't even want to call you Mark. We're just going to call you Platinum Key. But fellas, it's great to be doing this with you. I'm going to throw it over to you both now. We'll start with Josh. Josh, how in the world did you get involved with this?
Man, everything kind of comes full circle, man. Baseball will take you places that you've never been. And not ever did I think I'd be doing a podcast. But no stranger to, doing interviews or being on camera. And spoke with Mike McHenry. I think I did his show this past season. And he had actually reached out to me, a good common friend between, I think you and I, Noah. And that's kind of how we got connected. And when the opportunity was presented to me, it was kind of cool. And I was excited. It was a way for me to kind of, get back connected with the Pittsburgh fans in the city, where I spent a lot of time. And, it's pretty much a second home to me. So that's how we're here.
And then Mark, I mean, you're a guy who doesn't live in Pittsburgh. You just became a Pirates fan like 5 years ago, and now you're hosting a podcast with Josh Harrison. How in the world did this happen?
Yeah, it's rather surreal. But Noah reached out to me and about the opportunity, and I had to think about it for maybe half a second. Completely jumped at it. I mean, just honored to be here. So excited to talk Buccos, and can't wait to get started.
I think I speak for all 3 of us when we say we really appreciate this opportunity from the Foul Territory Network. I myself always loved coming on their programming when I was covering the Pirates. I think they cover baseball in such a unique way. And I think we're all very excited to add to that coverage. You look at the 3 faces on your screen, and in addition to seeing 3 handsome gentlemen, you're going to get 3 different perspectives. You have someone who is just a diehard fan, like Key, who is living and dying with every pitch on Twitter, pumping out all those Pirates clips during the games. He's there to just kind of feel how you're all feeling, the listener. Then you have Josh Harrison, a guy who's been there in the dugout. He's seen what winning baseball looks like in Pittsburgh. He's seen what losing baseball looks like in Pittsburgh as well. He understands what the fans want to hear. He understands what the fans need to hear. And he also understands how the players are feeling in the clubhouse and on the field. And I don't know if there are any other shows in this market or that cover this team that can offer a perspective like that. And then for me, my job's simply not to screw it up. I've covered this team for a while. I have some sources. I have some insight. But I think my job here in this role is just to tie it all together and make sure we put together a fun, unique, informative product for Pirates fans. I'll ask you both, though, guys. I mean, what are your expectations for this show?
As you said, I think you pretty much hit everything on the nail. But honestly, just to give, as you said, a little bit more in-depth insight that most people might not necessarily get from somebody inside of a clubhouse. And as you said, Noah, I believe we've done an interview one of your early years in Pittsburgh. So It's kind of, as I said, things come full circle. But even then, instead of the 1 to 2 minute answer that they may get post game, this is a thing that I can speak on for 20, 25 minutes or however long our show goes and just give a little bit more, personal experience, but also a viewpoint that, yourself, Noah, or Platinum Key, your situation might not necessarily, had taken a step back to look at. And same thing for me. I get to see it from a different viewpoint.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
No, you're good. You're good.
Oh, I was gonna say, I feel like we've set the groundwork, we've set the table. Let's talk some baseball here. First episode, I personally don't expect to get too deep into the weeds. This is going to be a show that runs 2 days a week in the off season. Our target goal is to air an episode every Tuesday and Thursday, and so be sure to subscribe on our YouTube channel where you can get the updates and make sure that automatically pops into your YouTube feed every time a new episode drops. In the regular season, we'll have 3 episodes a week. And there will also be some other content that I'm sure we come up with as the season progresses. There's going to be some inspiration and maybe come up with some new ideas, and we'll roll with that then. But for now, be sure to follow us on our social media pages. We'll have more information on those when they're all officially laid out. But first things first, subscribe to this channel so you can get the latest on all of our thoughts. And those thoughts will start right now. Guys, the Pirates head into the offseason following a tough 2025 campaign. Another last place finish. The goal, as they said, heading into spring training was to compete. They wanted to make the playoffs. They got further away from that goal. It was a rough season for fans. It was a rough season for players. I think it's easy to say that everyone's frustrated with how things went. Josh, just as a former player, I'm curious to get your perspective from afar on how you viewed their 2025 campaign.
From afar, definitely everything you spoke. Even mentioning the fans, disappointment, upset. Uh, Kind of like same old story. At some point, you don't want to live a comparison mode, but you see your counterparts in the division making moves and doing things. I'm sure there's questions of why not us? When is our turn? Um, and I've been in those shoes before, not saying why not us? When is our turn? But as you've mentioned, I've been through some losing seasons in Pittsburgh, but I've also been through some winning seasons. But I'm sure at some point, especially when you have a pitcher as a in Paul Skeens, a nice farm system. I mean, at some point you want to see things come to fruition and make its way to the big league level and translate into some postseason success.
Well, and I want to follow up on that, Josh, because you mentioned the pitching, the farm system, Paul Skeens. Prospects were such a big piece of the puzzle when you were here. When you see those guys coming up, and you were at one point in time one of those guys, that's great, and you understand the importance of that. But do you find an equal amount of importance? I mean, you look back to when they were winning when you were here. I think there were two very big moves they made that changed the entire fabric of the organization. And that's when they acquired AJ, and that's when they got
Russ.
acquired Russell. And do you feel like that those are the moves that are missing right now? Because we've seen the prospects come up, and for the most part, especially on the pitching side, the prospects have performed pretty well. But the big move from someone who is in their prime, someone who has played winning baseball, that's kind of been missing, right?
Oh, for sure. As you mentioned, AJ and Russ being signed, it definitely brought an expectation to the team, one, but also to the city. Two guys that have won a World Series. That was about winning. And you mentioned earlier, about competing. I had even said it in my brief stint. Well, not even my brief stint with the Pirates, long stint. But towards the end, I said, I'm not interested in competing because that's what you're supposed to do. Every night, two teams are going to compete. You got to want to win. And when AJ and Russ came over, there was a belief that we were going to win along with us that were no longer prospects coming up. So that blend of somebody that's been there, done it with guys that were hungry to do it. It was pretty much like a match made in heaven. And it wasn't just AJ and Russ. You had Clint Barmas.
Mm-hmm.
There were some other
Liriano.
signings, pitching wise, Liriano, and then you just look around at what they did when we went for it. They signed Marlon Byrd. They traded for
Yep.
that. Those were moves that ignited us. Not only just the city, but in the clubhouse. Because we felt like, okay, these are not only names, but people that night in and night out, they play to win.
Mark, I'm going to ask you a couple questions now. I mean, as from the fan perspective, what do you feel like this group gives you any sort of positivity heading into the offseason? Or is it just something where you say, hey, look, we have pitching. We knew we had pitching going into this past season. It's the same group with the same problems and something has to change.
I think that's the hardest part of last year was there was actually some hope going into the year, it felt like. you just had the rookie of the year starting pitcher who's possibly the best pitcher in the league, and you're hoping that some of the young guys were going to take a step forward. It felt like they were close, and the end of 2024 was just, it felt like things were finally clicking, and then it all fell flat, and it was just, that was the biggest disappointment for me, was just the, I had some expectation this year, and so I feel like going into 2026, I'm a lot more cautious to get optimistic like that. I was told the exact same thing last year, that this team was going to improve. They're going to compete. They're going to do things in the 2025 offseason and make the team better, to make players in the clubhouse believe that this club wants to win, surround themselves with players like that in the past, like they've done in the past. And then it just didn't really happen. I will say that like adding Spencer Horwitz helped, but you got to do that a few more times. So we'll see. Not exactly the most optimistic, but there are some positives, obviously. So
Yeah, and I can speak from my experience covering the team. It felt like they entered this past season with a ton of pressure because they were all expecting help to arrive.
yeah,
They knew what prospects were going to be here. They knew eventually Braxton and Bubba and Burrows and all of those young arms that they were going to be there. And they were banking on that, but they were also banking on the other flaws from 2024 to be addressed. And I think it was pretty clear, and obviously my reporting covered this extensively, that when they reported to camp, everyone kind of looked around and said, well, where's the difference? We have the same manager, we have the same GM, we have the same prospects, and we pretty much have the same lineup, minus a few guys. You trade out a Michael A. Taylor for a Tommy Pham, you trade out a Rowdy Tellez for a Spencer Horwitz, but for the most part, you have the same core is there. And players expressed that to me, where it was frustrating knowing that you learned last year that this puzzle wasn't good enough. And when you go into it with the same puzzle, obviously you want to compete to be better. But I feel like that pressure to play perfect baseball, win on the margins, was what they kept saying over and
yeah,
over again. It weighed on them. And that's why you saw a team play super tight and make a lot of mistakes and played so bad of a brand of baseball that by the end of April, their year was over. They were ready to fire their manager and start focusing in on next year. And that's got to be frustrating. That's got to be frustrating to the fan base. Obviously, it's not fun to cover from a journalist perspective, but the players, that's why they were able to kind of come to me and voice their frustrations on these things, because these guys want to win. And when you go into a situation saying, hey, we know what our strengths are, we know what our weaknesses are, and those weaknesses aren't addressed, that's tough to go into battle. So we can pivot now on that note into the offseason. Same scenario, really. We know
Yeah.
what the strengths are. We know what the weaknesses are. We know we have a pretty good idea of what the budget is, right? I don't think it's fair to expect these guys to bring in a Kyle Schwarber or a Kyle Tucker
Pete
or
Alonso
someone
isn't going to be
along
a
those.
Pirate.
Yeah. But I mean, what should be the goal this offseason for this team? Josh, I'll start with you.
The goal for this team, you mentioned pitching has been holding up its end of the bargain. Offense, obviously, we know that can fluctuate, but you have to solidify an offense. That was one of the biggest things when we were successful, was our lineup 1 through 9. Even though pitchers were hitting, for the most part, we knew who 1 through 8 were, and guys knew where they were going to be. But not only that, we had a good blend of speed, good blend of power, but we were a team that made contact. I didn't really dive into the numbers, but what did the strikeout numbers look like this year? I know all across baseball it is alarming, but you look at the two teams that played in the World Series. Toronto, tough at bats. That's ultimately what you need. You need professional at bats. And when you mention a team full of, uncertainty, a lot of pressure, sound like a lot of guys that don't have a lot of time to where they are, comfortable in that situation because they're not used to it. So if you got a team full of that, who is there to bounce off? there's only so many catches out there, and catches and plant every day.
Right.
But at the same time, how many guys in that clubhouse have the confidence or let alone the experience of Kutch? It's just Kutch for the most part. And when you're counting on the whole lineup to kind of do its part and, as you say, that added pressure, I think you have to go out and try to take some pressure off of the lineup. You have to go get a bat.
Mark, anything to add on that? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Power.
You're all good. Go ahead.
I mean, they need to add power. They were 30th in the league in home runs, and it wasn't close. They were 30th in the league in OPS. There has to be some kind of threat. I get PNC Park is not exactly the friendliest place to be a power hitter, but at the same time, you need that threat. You're playing in Cincinnati plenty. Make up for it there. So I think that has to be the focus, and maybe like Eugenio Suarez or something. I don't know if he can replicate the season he had in 2025 and if the Pirates would be interested in signing someone of that caliber, but someone who brings power first, I think would be a natural fit. So
last season, this organization, there were tons of reports about it, how they made a larger commitment to the analytical side of the game. And some people had a problem with that because the payroll didn't jump up a ton. I personally didn't, because I understand that that's kind of how you have to win in this era of baseball. Josh, when you guys were here, analytics played a huge part in your success. I think it was probably more on the pitching side and the fielding side, learning how to shift, learning how to play to the strengths and go and find wins in areas where you can't find them. I think now that this new technology that they've invested in, these hires that they've made to their front office these last couple of seasons, it's time for them to work their magic. This is not going to be a team that can go out and buy the best power bat or maybe even the most experienced, established, solid 3-WAR player out there. But when you look at a way that this team can win, I think, is finding a way to make your pieces gel better together 1 through 9 in the lineup. I look at a team like the Milwaukee Brewers. They have a couple of really good players. Cheerio is an incredible player. Yelich has obviously been a guy for a while. But what makes the Brewers such a tough lineup to pitch against, in my opinion, is because their number 2 hitter is a great number 2 hitter because he knows exactly what he needs to do to make the number 3 hitter better, and so on and so forth and down the lineup. And when you see teams kind of built to play off of each other's strengths, find a guy who gets O'Neill Cruz better looks when he's at the plate, some lineup protection. Find a guy who's going to see a whole bunch of one pitch so the guy behind him, if he hits the other pitch really well, find guys who bat well behind each other and in front of each other. Put your pieces together in a better fashion. Right now, I think my biggest flaw with the Pirates lineup construction, aside from like what you pointed out, Mark, is the fact that they don't have a lot of slugging, is they have a lot of the same types of players. They have a lot of guys who are rather passive at the plate. They have a lot of guys who are trying to pull the ball, I think, too frequently, rather than maybe trying to hit something up the middle or try to hit something to the gaps a little bit. And I think that a mix of approaches could benefit this lineup a ton. I think that you look back to 2024 when Nick Gonzalez came up in May, and he's a notorious, first pitch hunter. That gave the entire lineup a spark because when you have 9 guys with the same entire approach, it's easier to game plan for in pitching, especially in today's analytical era. So I want to see the front office, these investments that they made, these people who I think have pretty good backgrounds, make the most of what the responsibilities that they're given. Find traits in players that you can afford to acquire via trade that gel well with the pieces that you're going to depend on. Find other players who will maximize the talents of a Spencer Horwitz, of a Brian Reynolds, of an O'Neill Cruz, and other guys too. That I think should be the mission. It's not a specific player. It's not a specific name. It's not a specific trade. Maybe not even specific traits, but complement what you have and try to extend that lineup like Josh said, 1 through 9. So, Josh, do you have anything to add on that? It's
yeah.
late. What's that?
Because the analytics side, I am on the opposite end of that.
Okay.
Not that I'm against analytics, but it's got to be blended well with what's already in place. I think the big issue right now is analytics sometimes is being used as a telltale or all
Hmm.
in when we use the analytics to kind of match with our intuition of what we felt. Because if you go back and look at some of those games, you'd see some of our pitchers. My boy AJ would be mad. Why are we over here when my sinker, analytics says to do this? But no, but I'm pitching this guy this way. But at the same time, it's a different era. We were all in tune with what type of player we were, what type of hitter we were. Analytics has caused some of these guys to think that they're pull hitters when they're really not. You just said it, no, a lineup full of pull hitters. That's because analytics says to pull the ball and hit it in the air, especially at PNC, because if you go in the gaps, it's probably caught. I made my living going gap to gap, and I'm not the biggest
Yep.
dude. I understood my strengths. Marte, a blend of speed and power. Polanco, a blend of speed and power. Kutch was Kutch. No need
Yeah.
to speak on that. Then you got Pedro bringing up. Then you got Garrett. It was a blend of speed and power, but guys that also understood an approach. Right now, baseball doesn't have an approach. So analytics has also gotten in the way of that, in my opinion, because for a guy to understand the type of hitter he is, it doesn't matter what the analytics is. You have to understand the intuition, the feel of yourself, and then put that with the analytics. And I think that's where the gap is, because some know, but the majority of people don't.
And I think you saw a
I
little
think
bit of that
uh,
in 2025 with the Pirates, just the way the lineup would come out. There was almost next to zero consistency. It was unique almost to see, like, oh, they used the same lineup from yesterday. Wow. And I
Creatures
mean,
of habit.
yeah, and so like obviously I feel like that's like analytics driven. You're like, okay, this guy needs to slot in right here, right here, right here. But then how does that feel like for the players, Josh? Like when you don't know where you're hitting in the lineup, does that matter? Does that have an impact on things?
I'll be honest with you, it sucks.
Yeah.
Especially when you look across the way and you see teams that win or have been winning, and they know who's hitting first, they know who's hitting second. Okay, 6 through 9 might fluctuate, but we had a time where we were coming in and every single day was, we don't know who's hitting first, we don't know who's hitting second. And I can remember, I mean, for as good as Kutch was, we knew he was hitting third.
yep.
We had a year where the lineup got jumbled up, he got moved to second, guys got moved
Mhm.
around, and for the first month, it was, oh, we are kind of discombobulated
Yeah.
because we just a little uncomfortable. Not it's still the game. You still got to play the game. But as I said, 162 games, creatures of habit, being where you need to be, understanding your rhythm, your routine. You throw that off, and every day is something different. I mean, it's kind of hard to ask a bunch of young dudes that probably don't ever really know their full routine how to come and prepare because they don't know what to prepare for. Preparation is very key. That's everything.
I can't help but laugh when you say that, though, Josh, because I mean, you literally became famous for being able to be plugged in every position and every spot in the order. But I
Yeah,
get what you're saying, though.
I
I get that.
prepared every day. Every day
Right.
was a
That's
different
exactly, yeah.
preparation for that.
Yeah.
It
I get
wasn't
what you're
a
saying.
video showing to say, hey, do this. No, I
Yeah,
knew what I was capable of and I worked at it, not being told. And not saying that's what the Pirates do. I'm just speaking in general. I
for
think there
sure.
needs to be an attention to detail as to the individual.
I think the biggest takeaway here from just this, and I think probably the best goal that they could achieve is this team needs an identity. Josh, like what you were talking about, the combination of speed and power, and you talked about how you used analytics to enhance your game because you guys knew what types of players you were. You knew what your skill sets were. You knew what Kutch did well. You knew what Russ was going to do well. You knew what Neil was going to do well. You knew what some of the bench guys could provide and what they couldn't provide. And you used that information to enhance what you could do. This team doesn't have an identity, especially offensively. I think on the mound, they clearly have one. And that's why you're seeing success. That's why they've been able to develop these guys so young and get them to the major leagues to perform at a high level at such a young age. But offensively, somewhere along the development process, it feels like they've lost their identity at the plate, that either they're trying to get everyone to be the same hitter or they don't know what players to tell to do certain things. And they've got to figure that out. They need to have a lineup that together, 1 through 9, can say, this is how we're going to beat teams. It could be, boom or bust. It could be taking advantage of speed and playing a little bit of small ball. It could be trying to hit the gaps. It could be something, But that's what you pay your analytics department for. That's what you pay your development people for. And that's what you pay your players for as well, is to figure out that identity as a whole and become a better baseball team. So I think we can wrap it up there. I think that was some good ball talk right there, and we can put a pin in it for next time. Guys, first episode in the books. How we feeling?
Feeling great.
Oh,
Excited for the next one.
that was so much
All right.
fun. Make sure to subscribe, hit the little bell on
Yes.
YouTube. We'll post on our socials too, let you know when we're coming out with stuff, but can't wait.
I think in true Josh Harrison fashion, next time he's got to have like a different spot in the screen order. We'll have him in second, and then we'll have him at third the next time. That's how we'll do this.
I
But
love it.
guys, this was a lot of fun. Thank you both for being a part of this. Really excited to go on this journey with the two of you and all of you watching and listening at home. Like Mark said, hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned. Follow us all on our social platforms. You can find those by just simply typing our name in. We're not hard to find. And stay tuned for the next episode of Bucco Territory presented by the Foul Territory Network.